There are some questions that have plagued mankind since the dawn of time. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Is there a purpose to our existence? What happens after we die? It seems like every human has wondered about these things at one point or another, and it's not surprising why. After all, they are some pretty big questions. But while existential questions like these have been pondered for thousands of years, there are other questions that are perhaps even more important. These are questions that have the potential to change your life in a single moment. If you were to hear the answers, how can I become rich? How can I become famous? Who's going to marry me? Well, today we won't be talking about those kind of questions. Instead, we will be focusing on a much more simple, yet profoundly important question. Are you a good person? Sometimes this can be an easy question to answer. If you donate to charity, help out your friends and family, stay out of trouble with the law, then the answer seems obvious. You are a good person. But what if we told you that this may not actually be true? What if there is no way to truly know whether or not you are a good person? Does this mean that everything you do doesn't matter? Will you just give up on life? Of course not. And that's why you need to keep watching until the end of this video, because that's where we will tell you what you can do instead. First, let's take a look at why it's impossible to know if you are a good person. Imagine you walk down the street and see someone lying on the ground injured. You don't want to stop and help them, but you also don't want to feel guilty about walking past them without offering any assistance. So you ask yourself, am I a bad person? In this scenario, it would be pretty easy to argue that you aren't a bad person. You didn't intentionally hurt anyone, and you didn't steal or lie to anyone that day. Maybe you even helped someone else out at work or gave some money to charity. Surely that counts for something, right? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. The thing is, there is no objective way to measure good or bad. It's entirely subjective. In fact, the only reason you think you're a good person is because of the actions you perform, which means you're only as good as your last action. This may sound like a weird concept, but stick with us and we'll explain further. Let us say that you volunteer at an animal shelter every week and treat your friends and family well. But one day you find yourself stuck in traffic and get frustrated, so you honk your horn at the car in front of you. According to our definition, that makes you a bad person. On the other hand, if you had honked your horn politely to let the driver know you were there, you would be considered a good person. Basically, it means that every single one of us is both good and bad all at the same time. And the only thing that determines which label we are given is the opinions of others. This can be seen in the way people perceive Albert Einstein as a good person, despite his pacifist views in opposition to war and violence. Yet there are people who believe he was a bad person because of the same beliefs. Even if you try to do good deeds to make up for your bad ones, that doesn't necessarily make you a good person either. After all, studies have shown that people who do good deeds often do so with ulterior motives. For example, volunteering at an animal shelter may seem like a selfless act, but studies have found that many volunteers have a hidden agenda. They want people to think they are compassionate and caring individuals. Therefore, even if you've never knowingly done anything bad in your life, and strive to help others whenever possible, it's impossible to know if you're a truly good person. Because ultimately it comes down to whether or not the people around you think you are good. And unfortunately, you can't always trust their judgment. After hearing this, you might feel upset, confused, or even angry, and that's understandable. But if you really want to know how you can be a better person, then it's important that you keep watching. We still have a lot to cover. Now that you know why it's impossible to truly be 100% good all the time, it's time to learn what you can do instead. Firstly, it's important to note that being a good person isn't everything you may think it is. In fact, sometimes doing what you think is good can actually be quite bad. Take, for example, the bystander effect. This is a psychological phenomenon that occurs when people are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. Essentially, it means that the more people around, the less likely you are to help someone in need. If you ever find yourself in this situation, remember that although it might seem like the right thing to do to call for help, it could actually do more harm than good. Of course, this doesn't mean that you should never help someone in need or stand up for what you believe in. It just means that you should always be aware of the consequences of your actions. If you really want to be a good person, then you need to think about how your actions affect not only yourself, but also those around you. This may sound like a difficult task, but it's actually quite simple once you get the hang of it. All you need to do is consider how your actions might affect others before taking action. If you do this, you'll be able to avoid many of the pitfalls that could cause you to accidentally do bad things. However, even if you are careful about your actions, there will still be times when you accidentally hurt someone or do something wrong. And when this happens, it's important to know how to apologize effectively. A simple sorry won't cut it most of the time. But if you really want to be a good person, then you need to take responsibility for your actions and make amends. This doesn't mean you have to give up everything you have or suffer for weeks on end. It just means that you need to be willing to make changes in order to fix the harm that you caused. For example, if you accidentally break someone's vase, you could simply buy them a new one as a replacement. Or if you say something that offends someone, take some time to reflect on what you did wrong and try to do better next time. It's also important to be honest with yourself about your mistakes. Often people will try to make excuses for why they did something bad or minimize the damage they caused. But if you really want to be a good person, then you need to take full responsibility for your actions and learn from them. Finally, you must realize that sometimes doing good means doing nothing at all. As we mentioned earlier, sometimes trying to be good can actually do more harm than good. Take, for example, the case of the bystander effect. If you see someone being attacked and you step in to help, you could actually put yourself in danger without making the situation any better. In cases like these, the best thing you can do is nothing at all. Of course, this doesn't mean that you should just stand around and watch while someone gets hurt. It just means that you need to be smart about your decisions and weigh the risks and benefits before taking action. Sometimes the best way to be a good person is to simply stay out of the way. Now that you know how to be a good person, it's time to put it into practice. Start by making small changes in your everyday life and gradually work your way up from there. Before you know it, you'll be on your way to becoming the best person you can be. In conclusion, it's impossible to truly know if you're a good person because good and bad are relative terms. What may be good for one person may be bad for another. Ultimately, it's up to the people around you to decide whether or not you are good. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be a good person. By following the tips above, you can make sure that you're doing everything you can to make the world a better place. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.